Today we are going to solve this SQL problem called recommendation system. In this problem, you are given the list of Facebook friends and the list of Facebook pages that users follow. Your task is to create a new recommendation system for Facebook. For each Facebook user, find pages that this user doesn't follow, but at least one of their friends does. Output the user ID and the ID of the page that should be recommended to this user. We have two tables, users underscore friends and users underscore pages. If we look at users underscore friends table, we have the user ID and we have the friend ID for each user ID. So for user ID 1, we have 3 friend IDs. So these 3 IDs are the friends of user ID 1. Similarly, we have the friend IDs for each of the user IDs. Now let's see users underscore pages table. In this table we have the user ID and the page IDs that this user is following. So basically we need to suggest or we need to recommend the pages that each user ID is not following. We need to take the friend IDs of each user ID and we need to get the pages that these friend IDs are following. So using those page IDs, we need to recommend some pages for each user ID, and we need to make sure that the page IDs that we are recommending to each user ID are at least followed by one of their friends. Okay, so let me go over an example so that we can understand clearly what we need to figure out. The first table is users underscore friends and second table is users underscore pages. This will show the friends of each user and this will show the pages of each user. Now let's write down a single example. So we will have the user ID and friend ID in the first table, and here I will take the user ID 1. So for user ID 1, let's say we have 3 friends, 2, 4 and 5, and in the second table we will have the user ID and we will have the page ID. This will tell that this particular user ID has these page IDs, which are basically the pages followed by each user. So let's take for user ID 1, let's say user ID 1 is following pages 23 and pages 25. Similarly, for other user IDs, let's take user ID 2 and let's say this user ID 2 is following 4 pages, and those 4 pages will be, let's take 23, 24, 25 and 26. Now the idea is, for user ID 1 we want to recommend some pages. So for that we need to get the friends IDs of the user ID and we need to join this with the user ID in second table in order to get the pages followed by the friends of user ID 1. So when we do the join between friend ID and user ID between these two tables, we will be getting the pages of friend ID 2. So when we join with this, we will be getting these 4 pages. So these are the possible recommendations that we give to user ID 1, but we need to make sure that we do not give the same pages that user ID 1 is already following. In this case, user ID 1 is following page 23 and page 25, and user ID 2 is also following page 23 and page 25. So we should not recommend these two pages because these two pages are already followed by user ID 1. So we need to recommend new pages. So the new pages in this case will be page 24 and page 26. So these are the two new pages that we can recommend to user ID 1. Similarly, we can take for user ID 4, for friend ID 4, let's say in users underscore pages table we have for 4 we have 23, 29, 30. In this case, since we already have 23 for user ID 1, which you can see here, we do not recommend this page and we recommend 29 and 30. So I hope you have got an idea in order to recommend the pages for each user ID. And there can be some cases where for user ID 4, for example, let's take for 4, we also have this user ID is following page number page ID 24, but we have already got page ID 24, so we do not have to take this again. So basically sometimes you will have duplicates, so we need to use distinct in order to remove duplicate recommendations. So I hope you have got a clear idea of how we need to solve this problem. We basically join by friend ID in users underscore friends table and user ID in users underscore pages table, and once we got all the page IDs, we need to filter out the rows where we have the current user ID already following some pages. So we need to remove these two page IDs. So we will be writing the logic to filter out these two page IDs among the possible page IDs for recommendation of these pages based on the friend IDs. So I hope you have got a clear understanding about the approach that we will be following. What I will do is I will join the two tables. So I will take I will write from users underscore friends, which is first table, and I will write it as UF join users underscore pages UP on UF dot friend ID UF dot friend ID is equal to UP dot user ID. And from here we will take the user ID from first table, and we also need the page ID from second table. So UP dot page ID, and at the end we will order by user ID UF dot user ID UP dot page ID. Now we need to write the condition in order to filter the page IDs that each user is already following. So in order to do that, we will use where condition and we will use not exists, and here we will give a condition that will give us the page IDs that user is already following. So here we will write select 1 because we just need whether we get the rows or not, so we do not care about the data that we get. because we are using not exists function. So here select one from users pages, and I will write it as up2, where up2 dot user id is equal to the current user id. We get the current user id from uf dot user id, and up2 dot page id is equal to up dot page id. What we are doing here is we are taking the current user id and we are checking if the current user id is, we are checking whether we have the current user id, and along with that we are checking we have the current page id. So let's say we are taking current user id as user id 1. It will go inside this loop and it will be current user id, which will be user id 1, and it will take users underscore pages one more time. So this is like a separate table that we are considering, and we will get user id 1. So user id 1 will be equal to user id 1 in the users underscore pages table, and we are also checking with the second condition, which is the current page id should be equal to page id that corresponds to the user id 1. So if we get any rows from here, since we are using not exists, it will basically filter out those rows. So that is what we are doing here. So I hope you have understood how to solve this problem. If you have any other approach to solve this problem, let me know in the comments below. So that is all in this video. I hope you have understood how to solve this problem. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.